There you go.
Got me. Okay. Well, good morning. I'm Larry Byrd, represent House District 104, which is East Forest County. I don't have anything in the city of Hattiesburg, but I have East Forest County going all the way down from Jones to Stone, all of Petal, the Petal area. Came in the legislature in 2008. Currently chairman of county affairs and have been for several years. I'm on the Energy Committee, Management, Transportation, Ways and Means, and Education. And just glad to be here this morning. I'm in Jackson. I'm in my camper actually, and we've got some snow up here on my truck, but there's not much on the asphalt. But good chilly morning. So anyway, thank you for the forum, and glad to have the opportunity to visit with you.
All right, we'll turn to Kent McCarty now.
Morning, everybody. My name is Kent McCarty. I represent House District 101, which is North Lamar County, Oak Grove, Summerall, Olo, Midway area. I'm starting my second term, but first full term in the legislature. No changes to my committee assignments. I'm still the Vice Chairman of Education. I'm on Banking and Finance. Can't remember the other ones. It's been a long year. But Vice Chairman of Education, I guess, being the main one. I guess where I spend most of my time working on education stuff. Really excited to start another crazy session, I'm sure. It's going to be very interesting with COVID and everything going on. It's a lot different even than last year was, and last year was a crazy year too. So I'm just excited about getting started this year. We've got a lot coming up in education, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. The situation at the Capitol is obviously a little bit different than we're all used to, and we're kind of living with the effects of COVID still. Last year we had a lot of legislators that got COVID, and we're definitely trying to avoid that. So excited about a full session and really happy to be with y'all this morning.
Thank you. Representative McGee, you're still muted. All right.
Good.
Yep.
Good morning, everyone. Thank y'all for having us this morning. I represent District 102, which is Central Hattiesburg. It is really the city of Hattiesburg from about 40th Avenue to downtown. And all the South Avenues, about half the North Avenues, up to the Country Club area and to Raw Springs. This is my fourth legislative session. My committees are Public Health, where I serve as Vice Chairman, Medicaid, Transportation, Universities and Colleges, and Elections and Apportionment, which will be interesting here in the next year as we start getting census numbers in and and redistricting begins.
Thank you. Thank you to each of our panelists for taking a moment to reacquaint each of our listeners with your districts and sort of some of the committee assignments that you take part in. Let's start this morning by both looking at the first vote, or I guess, I don't know if it's the exact first vote, one of the first votes you each made this year, and obviously it spans back to the end of the session last year, and Representative McCarty is kind enough to have the state flag in the background. And I assume, if I haven't missed my calendar up, I think it's later today that the governor will actually sign the legislation. And so presumably by the close of business today, the state flag will be officially part of the law. But I'd like to give each of you a couple of minutes, if you'd like, to talk about sort of the flag / rebranding Mississippi. So for a lot of business folks and a lot of business associations and a lot of development groups, the whole issue of let's rebrand Mississippi and let's go back and begin some recruitment efforts, and as the post-COVID economy begins, hopefully soon. So I'll throw that out there, and we'll sort of start at the opposite end. I'll let Representative McCarty, since he's got the flag in the background, I'll let him go first if he would like, and talk for just a little about kind of his thoughts on rebranding of Mississippi. And you're still on mute.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, it's crazy. You do so many of these Zoom calls and you still can't remember how to unmute yourself before you talk. No, I think it's a great opportunity for Mississippi. I think, last year was truly a crazy year. And then to cap it all off with the vote last summer that when all of it started, it didn't look like it was going to happen. And then it kind of, we just built the momentum over the course of the summer to get the votes together to change the flag. So I think, the voters of Mississippi spoke in the election and overwhelmingly adopted this new flag, which I think looks amazing. And it looks even better, flying. And there's a lot of businesses I've noticed that have already started flying it around our area in the Pine Belt and in Jackson. And it looks great, flying above a business. So I think it's a huge opportunity. I think the people spoke and there's a real sense of we've gotten this done. So let's move on now and let's do the work that actually comes with what we've done here with the flag. So I'm excited. I think it's a huge opportunity. I was really pleased with the vote. I think everybody was happy to see the state embrace such a unifying symbol that really speaks to what Mississippi is all about. So I know there are several representatives on this call that have been well ahead of me on this fight. So I worked on this before I was even elected. So I would defer to them to talk about that some more.
Anyone else on the panel want to comment?
Chad, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll jump in and kind of give really echo what Kent said, but just to give a little background of just how the process came to be. Like Kent was saying, it was such an unusual year, and the timing of this would have never, we would not have this new flag had really there not been COVID, because we wouldn't have been in and we would not have still been in session in June, and the momentum that came with that, with the death of George Floyd, creating really a groundswell within the state to finally take this move. So it's interesting in the year of 2020 and all that came with it, had it been just a regular year, we would not have this new flag. But I will tell you, we took the vote. It was a rule suspension, actually, because the bill deadline had already passed. So we had to pass a rule suspension to even allow this bill to come up in June. And it was a 2/3 vote. And just my perspective on that, it was, if you could have been there, if folks could have been in the Capitol that day, it was an exciting but highly emotional, and I will just describe it as a heavy. It was a heavy day that day, because just knowing what we were having the opportunity to do after so many years, and so many that had gone before us to try to make this happen. And I'll say Percy Watson, who's not on this call this time, I'm sure he'll be on the March forum, told me after the vote that for 42 years there had been bills dropped to change the flag, and he never thought he would see it. And so to be able to share that with him and take that vote was incredible. But I will say that I do think it is a new opportunity for the state of Mississippi. We have this new flag. I think we have sent the word to the rest of the nation that really what we're made of, and I think it's an incredible opportunity for our children and for our grandchildren to grow up under this flag that is not divisive and really unites us all. And then with a vote of 72% of the state in November to support the new design, even if they didn't really like the design, maybe this wasn't their choice, but folks jumped in and supported, knowing that this was the way to go. And so I really think now, like Kent said, we can move on to the business of the state flying under a flag that really unites us all, and something that we should all be really proud that we have now. So I think it's a great start to 2021.
Thank you. Anyone else on this topic? Senator Barnett?
Yes, sir. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir. Got you now.
Okay. Well, Missy and of course Kent pretty well much saw how we all felt about the flag, but I would just like to say exactly what I said when we had to take this vote and when we had to discuss the flag from the Senate floor. I could just remember in 90 being deployed to Iraq. And then I can remember in 1991 coming home with the, with the feeling of accomplishment that we had went over and helped liberate a country, and to come back to a United States of America. But then when I get into my home state, kind of, when you hold your head down, because now you realize that you live in a state that is not united. And so for me, it felt good now that I can say that I do live in the United States of America, as well as a United State of Mississippi. And I just pray that going forward, we continue to build up on this momentum and to continue to rebrand Mississippi as that state that can, instead of that state that won't or that state that can't. So that's my feelings on the flag.
Thank you, sir, for your perspective. Any other words on the flag? Or we'll move on to, got plenty more topics. All right, let's move on now. We'll talk about sort of the COVID-19 economy, because we all know that COVID-19 has really created some soft spots in our economy, local economies for sure. And then let's talk about the recovery. Obviously, we know that the vaccine is currently being deployed, and you all are following that. And but I think one thing that our listeners and our community and our business leaders and local folks would really like to hear you all talk about is have there been any early conversations about initiatives coming from the Mississippi legislature to continue to support small business and struggling municipalities through the rest of the pandemic? I know that you all have had a couple of programs that you put in place. And so Chairman Byrd, I'll start with you, because I know you have your finger on the pulse of county affairs, and that always leads into sort of the municipalities and other areas. But any word that you've heard on any new programs, or y'all still taking a look at that?
I'm not aware of anything new that's coming. I think we did good setting up a program to get reimbursed through the CARES Act. We did a great thing when we let MEMA handle this for us, because they're already set up for this type of thing. So it worked out really well. I don't know that we'll get any more money put into it. I think most of the counties have already filed their claim, and those items that qualified, you can't make up revenue through this, but you can just reimburse yourself for those necessary expenses. There have been some too, because we've had to gear up for social distancing and for protecting the workers. And the courthouses have to be secure, clean. So all those things take effect. But I'm not aware of any new programs moving forward. There may be, but I've not been approached with anything thus far.
Okay. Anybody else with any comments on that, or the COVID and the economy? I know that we've all, Mississippi as a state has benefited from the CARES Act and the national money being pushed down, and I'm sure there'll still be some opportunity for us to see as a state what this new package or any future package may have to help us. So maybe a little too early on this topic, but any final thoughts on that before we move on?
Well, I will jump in and tell you that sales tax revenue for Petal has been good, in spite of the difficulties that industry may have. We're folks are buying things, and so we've benefited in that way as a city with increased sales tax.
I think I would characterize the local economy as a sort of across the state as we definitely have soft spots. We've all seen restaurant closures and things like that. But then there are a lot of businesses that, as Chairman Byrd said, do continue to prosper. Senator Barnett, how about in your community? How's the economy, and any thoughts on programs that y'all have talked about in the Senate? You're still on mute. Thank you.
I'm not aware at this time of any programs, anything that has been discussed within the Senate, but I do know that several of my areas that I represent have indicated that because of COVID, it forced individuals to understand the importance of shopping local and supporting local. And a lot of the local businesses have done well through this pandemic. I've just prayed that going beyond this pandemic is that we continue to do that, to understand the importance of local. And I've never been one to shop the internet because I understand that it hurts local economies all over the place. And I just pray that through all of this, we can continue to shop local and support local, because those local individuals who decide to go into business for themselves in our local communities is what keeps our communities running. So I'm just hoping that we can continue to have that approach even after COVID.
Thank you. Any other comments on the what we hope to soon be the post-COVID economy? All right, I know Representative McCarty is a small business owner, so I'm sure he is keenly aware of that. Any observations from your businesses, just as a general? I know you probably are watching the total economy as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've done okay at our drive-through locations in Hattiesburg. Just the background for those that don't know, I own Java Mo's in Hattiesburg, and now in Poplarville as well. So we're doing okay at our drive-throughs. I think people are still out and about, but I think, just as a general member of the small business community, I think you hit it on the head. The problem, the soft spots, as you call them, in restaurants is something I'm really concerned about. But we've seen a lot of local places close already, and I'm sure there are more to come. And I know that the federal government released their second round of stimulus, and I really would hope to see that if we get money sent back to the state, that we continue to focus on our small businesses, because they are the ones who are not going to make it through this if we don't get back to normal relatively quickly. And even some, if we do, I know several business owners that in the same industry that I'm in, that sustained losses last year for virtually the whole year. And you can do that for a time, but when you can't serve, restaurants can't make it on 25-50% capacity. And I know that's what this situation requires with safety precautions, what they are, but buy a gift card, go do to go. I do to go more often than I'd like to admit, probably for pretty much every meal. So I'm doing my part to support local businesses. And I would strongly implore everyone else, if you are able to, and you need to go, just remember that there are people that this is more than just the business owner's livelihood. They've got employees who are also, reliant on the paycheck they get from this job. So that's where I'm concerned. I think the quicker we can get everyone vaccinated safely and we can all get kind of back to normal, the better off the economy will be. But it is kind of amazing. Representative Byrd mentioned this, but the hit to the economy has been, at least in my opinion, much smaller than I would have thought a year ago, as far as sales tax revenue across the state in general. But it is, some industries are actually doing better than they were before COVID started. So it's been a shift for sure, but it is just very interesting, the effect that it has had on our budget and on our sales tax numbers and on the small businesses that provide the sales tax numbers.
Thank you. Let's transition now to a topic that I know you all are interested in. That's the general topic of education, and then I'll sort of drill down with some different specific questions. But I know several of you are very involved with education legislation and have followed that for years. But the first and foremost, we all know that aside from our frontline healthcare workers, some of the other real heroes in our communities have been our teachers, because they've certainly gone above and beyond. They've had to transition from normal classroom environments to Zoom meetings, to wearing PPE, to being able to deal with their students in all manners of different ways. And in many cases, the school districts weren't prepared for that. And certainly that'll sort of lead us to another topic as we continue today is broadband. But any comments as we talk about our teachers for teacher pay raise, or has there been any comments? We're awful young in the session. I always joke this first panel, sometimes the questions aren't really fair because you really haven't even gotten unpacked up there. But any general consensus or comments coming out so far that y'all are hearing among your colleagues about teacher pay raises or anything of that manner? I'll let anybody wants to jump in.
I'm happy to jump in on this if nobody else is going to take this one. I think that we all would agree that last year we weren't able to do a teacher pay raise because of budget concerns, and I think this year the approach from people that are way well above my pay grade is that we need to kind of see where the numbers fall. But I mean, I certainly think that that's a priority, and especially after the year that, as you mentioned, that our educators have had, I think they are certainly due for multiple raises. And I think that if the numbers, shake out and we're able to, I think that will happen this year. But it's one of those things where I think we're going to wait, at least on the House side. It seems that our posture is to wait until we see kind of where the budget is going to be for this year, to ensure that we can afford to do this sustainably, because these are, costs that we incur each year. And as we do raises, and which the intention has been to raise teacher pay, especially, from the lieutenant governor, to do some form of teacher pay raise every year. And all those costs obviously add up. So we've just got to make sure that it's something that's sustainable. I think it's a priority for most of our members. And I know, you'd be hard pressed to find a candidate who ran and won an election last year that did not talk about teacher pay. And I think it's time that we kind of deliver on those promises. So everybody, I think, was very understanding last year. We had a teacher pay raise bill that was well on its way, and then COVID happened and everything kind of came to a screeching halt. So I think everybody was understanding last year. I think people would be understanding this year. But again, I think if the money's there, or even close to there, and we can find it, we need to make that a priority of this year, since we weren't able to last year. So that's kind of, and like you said, it's kind of so early, it's hard to really say, but that's kind of where we're at right now on that.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and the better question may be, we've heard from many of you talking about there's growth in sales tax revenue, there's growth in sales tax revenue across the state. Has there been any conversation, and I'll sort of, we can sort of start with Representative McGee and then maybe go over to Representative Byrd. Has there been any conversation about maybe pushing the budget process back a little bit? Again, I know y'all are real early in this, in the whole session, but it may, we don't know what federal stimulus is coming. We really haven't even unpacked, those are my words, unpacked the one that was passed just a few days ago at the end of 2019. I know on our campus, we know we have money coming, but we have no idea as to the rules of the money. So any thoughts about moving that budgeting process back, or Representative McGee, we'll start with you.
Chad, I haven't heard that. Now, my colleagues have may heard otherwise. Like you said, we just gavelled in last Tuesday. And so my understanding is that the deadlines continue to be what we have a very long preset of deadlines, as you well know. And so my understanding is those deadlines continue to be the same as they were set. Now, obviously, if we get some more federal dollars, then that could possibly change things. But, starting week 2 of the session, my understanding is that we are, proceeding with the deadline schedule. And I would think that we would get into to the thick of things. Typically, budgeting really hits, we really hit hard on doing budgeting and appropriations issues really come March. It's really kind of the last part of the session. I'm not on appropriations, but my understanding is for today anyway, that we are proceeding with the typical schedule of deadlines, unless someone else knows something differently.
Yeah, Larry, I know you're on Ways and Means, but any thoughts about it in general?
Well, historically, we wait as long as we can to finalize a budget, because we want to get the best numbers that we can get and get the best look to get the best projection going forward. And we're above the revenue estimate now, so we have some money. We'll see where that goes. We have a lot of needs, as you know, many needs in many areas: corrections, transportation, education. So we'll just see where that shakes out. But the budget won't be finalized until toward the end of the session.
Okay, great. And personally, I'm a fan of those hard and fast deadlines. It really makes the trains move down the track. And I know as y'all get close to the end of the session, you appreciate those deadlines. That's one thing our state system does that Washington sometimes loses sight of. Hard deadlines will keep you honest. As we continue to talk about education, you know, we've got our earliest learners from our pre-K, and I know y'all have done a lot of work on the collaboratives. I know there's been key investment in pre-K education, dual credit, dual enrollment programs for juniors and seniors in high school. Any thoughts about expanding opportunities for our next generation? You know, our human capital is one of the most significant and one of the strongest things Mississippi has when we recruit businesses. So I'll just sort of roll it out. So any general topics, any general thoughts on education investment aside from a pay raise, programmatic, and some things that may not actually, you know, cost more money. They just may be, you know, retooling programs we already have. Representative McCarty, you got any insight on
Yeah,
that?
I think that, you know, last year we were able to add some additional funding into the collaborative program. I mean, increase some per pupil spending in that program. So I think we're gonna, you know, look at that again this year. I know Representative McGee has worked on this for a while as well, so she may have more to say about that. But I think you know, that is definitely something that I think is very important and has been, you know, something that the legislature has done. And before I was here, that I think actually started with Representative Barker or Mayor Barker when he was representative, if I'm not mistaken. So that's some really good work, and our collaborative program has been nationally recognized as being the correct way to do pre-K and early childhood education. So I'm excited to see a push for that, and I think as we continue to have the resources, we should continue expanding that, because that is absolutely, I think, the best investment we can make in education for the future of Mississippi. I think all the research shows that, and I feel like, you know, I get on the soapbox on this, but all the research shows that the 3 to 5 years are the most impactful years on a child's learning, and the brain development that occurs during those years, you know, by the end of that point, most of the child's brain development has already happened. So for a lot of these young people that aren't getting exposed to things at home, you know, we're not setting them up for success. And I think that is our chief responsibility as the, you know, the leaders of Mississippi, is to prepare the next generation for their best. And I think the best way to do that is with investment in early childhood education. So I look forward to hopefully continuing to invest in that and expand that program through the next session.
Any other comments on education programming? All right, we'll transition on to another important topic, and that is a topic that I think has really been sort of exacerbated by the pandemic, because obviously here at Southern Miss and in our schools, you know, we did a lot of virtual learning, a lot of online, but the access that Mississippians have to broadband is a very significant issue. We had students, I know here at Southern Miss, I know the public schools have dealt with this as well, that had the technology, had the hardware, you know, laptop, tablet, whatever it may be, but did not have access to broadband. And I know sort of pre-pandemic, when rural broadband was talked about, and with the cooperatives and other groups, you know, putting money into that, there was a lot of different opinions. But I think during the pandemic, it sort of opened up. I'll start with you, Chairman Byrd. Thoughts about rural broadband? I know in your community, you've got a high achieving school district, and I know not everyone has the same speed of internet, and sometimes it's a mere one side of the road to the other.
Well, you know, it's difficult when you're in the #1 school district to really understand those who are not able to achieve that degree of success. and the broadband is necessary, and it's coming, not fast enough. But you know, we made a change in the law that allowed these rural electric cooperatives to use part of their infrastructure to lease it out, form a separate corporation or whatever, and utilize something that's already there for internet. And that's a big thing. We were not able to take advantage of the Connect America Act funds because the rural cooperatives were not able to until we passed enabling legislation. And this has moved things forward. There are a lot of people now who are getting internet access who would not have it had the legislature not broadened that language so that rural cooperatives could participate in this. So going forward, I feel good about what we've accomplished, but we still have a long, long way to go. And I just say we're getting there.
Okay. Senator Barnett, any comment on rural broadband as it relates to especially education? I think that we all know that business and industry, rely on broadband internet access, but it's also really exposed, sort of in education as a whole. I think whether it's K through, the university system, that without access to it, without meaningful access to it, it's hard to, get your work done.
Yes, it is. I wish I was like Representative Byrd and my school districts were in that area where, broadband was not a problem. But when you talk about rural Mississippi, most of my district is a lot of rural Mississippi, and those students and those teachers and everyone, they're struggling daily to connect so that the kids can get the best, that they possibly can during this pandemic. And so, and I'm called every single day about when is it coming? How can I get it? Where is it available? And those type of things. And I feel for the children out there, because for some of them, it's a struggle just being in the classroom, traditional classroom, and to add the problem of not having broadband available only increases that for those children. So, and I'm just glad that the co-ops took advantage of the legislation that we passed, and some of them are teaming up with some of the other carriers to be able to get this broadband out there available to our students and everyone who need it. So I like to give the pat on the back to the Mississippi legislature for realizing that, hey, it was our time to step up and do something, and they did it. And glad of the teamwork that, like I said, the other ones are doing to be able to provide this. And also, like Representative Byrd said, we can't get it fast enough. So I'm hoping that here in the next little bit, that we will have Mississippi covered in as much broadband as we can. And since we're talking about education, I was glad to see that Dr. Wright had talked about not holding the students accountable this year for the test scores and things like that. I think our students should be tested, but I'm glad to see that some common sense have been used during this pandemic, because I don't think it's fair to test students or to be able to grade them when a lot of things that's going on now just simply not their fault. So, and I'm sure some of the others on this panel may feel different, but I just think that was a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Representative McGee, any comments on broadband, sort of as it relates to education?
Well, first I want to say the legislature really has prioritized expanding broadband in Mississippi. In 2019, we passed significant legislation that authorized the electric cooperatives to get into the business. And then here comes COVID last year, and then it takes on a whole new meaning because of distance learning issues. There was CARES Act money, which we appropriated a significant amount of CARES Act money so that existing broadband companies and the cooperatives could expand broadband throughout Mississippi. But it's not something that happens overnight. It takes time. And so sadly, we can't just flip a switch and all of rural Mississippi has access to broadband. It takes time. And so the impact of what we've done with regard to providing funding through the Public Service Commission to the cooperatives and existing broadband companies, some of them have begun the process, but again, we just don't know what how quickly this can happen. I'll say too, and another interesting issue for me as it relates to education is that my district, which is the city of Hattiesburg, I think every constituent that I have has access to broadband. So if they want to subscribe to broadband service through whoever it may be, Comcast, what have you, they have the ability to, but not every household has the finances or the technology to do that. So that's an additional challenge. So in my district, where everyone could have access to broadband, I know a lot of the students in the Hattiesburg public school system have challenges connecting simply because they don't have the means to access it. So that was another issue that we took up last year, and I believe that continues to be a challenge. So there's a lot to this with regard to when you refer to distance learning and education with regard to broadband. It's providing the opportunity to have broadband, yes, the technology, but also even when that is available, like right here in the city of Hattiesburg, not every child has that ability. So it's a complex issue, especially as it relates to distance learning you don't have to be in a rural area to not have access to broadband. So that's just a different perspective from somebody that represents a non-rural district.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point for us all to remember. And I know in Representative McCarty's district, he obviously has a couple of, I don't remember exactly how the lines fall, but there are several high achieving schools inside the Lamar County School District in his district. And I know that many of us who live out in that area have access, and then others I have colleagues at Southern Miss who live a little further out toward the Olo area, that they don't have enough bandwidth to teach their online classes there. So I think it's Representative McCarty, I'll sort of set you up for that one. I'll let you talk a little bit about the diversity of some of the areas that really many Mississippians wouldn't consider rural.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, Chad, you and I, unless you've moved, live in Lake Serene, so we have access to good high-speed internet. But then I spoke with a constituent before Christmas for a while about his concerns about, he lives out in the Summerall area, and, he basically said, we have nothing. I mean, he has said, I have a hotspot, I've got satellite, I've tried everything, and none of it works. And, he was calling to express the same concern. We have, students who have been learning from home for the last, some of which have been learning from home for the last year. And, these are all kids that are in the same school district. So to point out just his example, this would be in the Summerall School District, which is a high achieving school in Lamar County. There are students who live, someone said on one side of the road it works, one side it doesn't. That's the reality in a lot of areas of Mississippi. And that's a reality in some of my parts of my district. You may have a student who goes to Summerall who lives, in town that has fine internet, and then you go 5 miles down, north up into the Rocky Branch area, and they, may not have that at all. So, as several have commented over the course of this discussion about broadband, this is an issue that the legislature has taken seriously for the last several years, if not longer. And unfortunately, it's one of the hardest issues for us to solve with any kind of expediency. It would have been very nice to be able to snap our fingers and have this done, whenever March hit and everyone realized we were going to be, hunkering down and living a little differently for a while. It would have been nice if we could have rolled something out immediately. But, I think there was, and I'm less involved in that part of policy at the Capitol, but I know that there was a lot of, I sat in on meetings just as it relates to education and distance learning with different companies who can do different innovative things to get internet service out quickly. But at the end of the day, if your area isn't served by any of the major broadband companies, there's really not a lot you can do. There's a lot of, not a lot you can do quickly. So it's going to take a long-term investment. And I've been pleased to see that be a priority. And I hope that we continue to make that a priority because, the future is of education. A lot of it is going to be, a lot of it already has moved online, but a lot of it is going to continue to move online. So we've got to make sure that as best we can, we set up all of our students for success, and we make sure that everybody's got access to reliable internet connections so that they can, learn at the same pace that someone who has that does. So I think we'll continue to make that investment and hopefully try to, bridge the gap a little bit between those who have internet and those who do not.
Yeah, it's certainly one of those, I hesitate to call it a commodity, but a service that's that you don't realize how much you rely on it till you don't have it. 2 weeks before fall term started last year, before we all really knew what our transition plans were going to look like, our wireless internet system at Southern Miss failed for a week. And I assure you, the companies that made all the hardware and the software were sending people in here from all over the country because they didn't know if it was just a Southern Miss issue or it was something about their products. And so it's very, very important, but luckily we got it all back up and running, and everything's fine, and was fine to start the term. So we all certainly understand how important broadband internet connectivity is. Let's transition a little bit and talk about, there will be more money probably in the stimulus that's already cleared Congress and the president's desk. With a new administration coming into Washington and all, there's likely to be some more stimulus money depending on kind of where the pandemic and the recovery goes. When those monies come into Mississippi, last year there was a lot of back and forth between the legislature and the administration, the state administration, about who would control those and different things. So interested, and Representative Byrd, I'll start with you, because you've got the senior member here. What's the thought? You've already referenced that MEMA did a great job, distributing some of the funds to the counties. And there's a lot of great folks sort of working in many of these agencies that have history there. What's your thoughts about when these monies come in, where they should reside and how they should be distributed? Obviously, there's federal strings, a federal audit that'll follow them. And then obviously state, you all can attach further strings, rules. And there'll always be a state audit to follow that as well. So what are your thoughts on these monies coming in and how best to prioritize to get those out to the Mississippians?
Well, my concern would be, and I'm under the CARES Act, we really couldn't do infrastructure, but infrastructure is an important thing for our state. We still have a lot of bridges that are closed. We have bridges closed in Forest County, not many, but temporarily closed. But across the state, though, we have many bridges that are closed because they have wood piling under them. The federal bridge standards are different from what Mississippi standards were. So when we got inspected by the feds, we were mandated to close some bridges. So that's a big struggle. But infrastructure is important. If we don't have the roads for industry, they can't locate. You can't get your products to a market. So that would be my priority. Monies that we get, if it's structured, but the CARES Act was very narrow in how we could spend that money, and it had to be COVID related period. But we've got to move beyond COVID, and I feel like through vaccinations and through immunity, that in a couple of years it's going to be history, and we're going to get back to doing what we really need to do to move forward with our infrastructure.
Thank you. Senator Barnett, any thoughts on the distribution of those funds and how that should be handled?
Well, I just hope that, like Representative Byrd said, is that, the CARES Act money was, we can only spend it in certain areas. And I'm just hoping that when this money the federal money becomes available, is that it gives us a little bit more latitude on how we can spend this money across the state of Mississippi. And I do agree, Representative Byrd, we do need to focus some more on our infrastructure. With that, I think we need to try and focus some more on our small businesses with some of the federal dollars that's coming down. So. And hopefully we can do this with this, this time without it being too specific as to how we can and how we should spend the monies.
Thank you. Representative McGee, any thoughts on that?
Chad, I think we need to wait and see what happens. If money is sent down from the feds again, I think we need to see what strings are attached and what they tell us that we have to do and how we have to do it. the legislature maintained that we were the appropriating body of the state. And so, I hate that we did get into a little bit of a disagreement with the governor last go around, but I know the legislature will again maintain that position that if monies are sent to the state, that it is our job to appropriate those funds. And but again, the federal government may we just don't know. We don't know what would be included in whatever they send down. So I know that the goal would be to get money to the people of Mississippi and help in the greatest ways possible as quickly as possible. That has always been our goal and our intent. And so hopefully, when and if money comes our way again, that we can use it in the best way possible and get it out as quickly as possible to do the most good.
Thank you. Any other word on that topic? If not, I'm going to throw one more topic out that's very just in a conversation area, and it has to do with the state income tax. So I'll just sort of lay that out there, and we'll give each of you a couple of minutes if you'd like to talk about your thoughts on keeping, eliminating, changing, whatever it has to do with the state income tax, because that is a topic that's been at least broached by the governor and some members of the legislature. And of course, it's, as we've talked about, it's still early on yet. And then once we finish that topic, I'll give you all, a minute or two to make any closing comments you have. There may be something that you want to say or a topic that we didn't talk about this morning. So I'll start with you, Representative Byrd, and we'll just kind of go around the horn here. And the governor has at least recently come out in favor of eliminating personal income tax in Mississippi. I know some other members of the legislature have joined that. Obviously, sometimes these conversations take a while to sort of get traction, but obviously when you take away income streams, you have to replace income streams, or you have to have an economy growing fast enough to catch up. What are your thoughts on the sort of in general on the personal income tax? I know you haven't seen a proposal, and there may or may not be a proposal this year.
Well, there will be a proposal, and yes, I'm in favor of reducing personal income tax and eliminating it if we can. But when we move to the next bracket, where do you get the money? I mean, you're offsetting something somewhere, and we have a representative who's going to introduce a bill, and it'll be difficult to get, but it replaces the revenue that we get from personal income tax with a fuel tax, a user fee. User fees are great, and it would phase in over a period of 4 years, an increase in motor fuels, gasoline and diesel, and at the same time eliminate the next 4% tax bracket. So those are the kind of things that I can support wholly, because we don't want to find ourselves as we've experienced in the past, making a bad budget estimate and having to cut. I remember when agencies were being cut 5%. No agency could be cut more than 5% until all agencies were cut 5%. And then Haley Barbour could make surgical cuts. So it all sounds really good. Let's eliminate personal income tax. I like that idea. But we've still got a state to run and citizens to take care of.
Some good points. Senator Barnett, any comments from you?
Okay. Takes me a minute to navigate this computer screen to unmute the button.
Maybe a symptom of your lack of broadband availability.
Appreciate that. That's exactly what it is. I can somewhat agree with the proposal that the governor talked about, but again, the question is, where do we make the difference of that? Where do we make the difference of that? Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I introduced some legislation that talked about not the income tax, but the elimination of the grocery tax And I thought that I had committed a great crime around the Capitol because everyone was all up in arms about eliminating the grocery tax. And and to me, that's probably the most unfair tax there is because everyone does not pay tax on groceries, but we all pay the same taxes on everything else that we buy. And so I'm just curious to see how all of this is going to work out. When I think, the one tax that we do need to eliminate, which is a tax on groceries, because this is definitely a need. I mean, we need groceries. So I'm just curious to see how they're going to handle this tax proposal that's out there. I'm going to stay optimistic that maybe they can find a way to do it, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we do it in a manner that does not cause the state of Mississippi any revenue shortfalls while we're trying to do this. We think we need to study other states, how they have done it, what's been successful. But I do know from other states, i.e. Tennessee, that has done this. They don't have the personal income tax. They don't even have grocery tax, but the ad valorem taxes and all the other taxes are sky high. So, and that's what they use to substitute that with. So my question is Mississippi ready to substitute one tax for another tax? So just curious to see.
Yeah, I think you and Representative Byrd made some very good general points, obviously without seeing any proposal. Representative McCarty or Representative McGee, do you have any additional points you'd like to add to this? If not, we'll sort of transition out. I think but happy to give you both a chance to respond. Kent?
Look, Missy was about to start. Let her go first.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. I'll let you go first, Missy.
Look, like we've said so often, this is the second week of the session. And so I'm really interested to see what this proposal would look like. My understanding is that the House bill may look something like eliminating the 4% income tax. And so before I even was in the legislature, they eliminated the 3%, which I believe still hasn't quite been phased out completely. And I think the plan may be to, once that is phased out, then to begin phasing out the 4%. So, I like everyone else said, I want to see where we're going to come up with, where we're going to make this up. Where are we going to have to cut other areas? I am concerned about my university, for example. Is this going to result in, will this negatively impact higher education? Will this cause an increase in tuition for students? So I really would like to see if we cut the 4%, where do we make it up? And I know that we have said that, income tax is a tax on productivity that has been said. And so that we should shift to a more user-based tax, such as a gas tax or increased sales tax, those type of things. So I really look forward to seeing the proposal for all of this, but I don't want, obviously none of us do, for other areas to be adversely affected. And so, we would have to, it's a complicated issue. And so I look forward to seeing the proposal and learning more about it as the weeks go on.
Yeah.
Well, I think that my colleagues have all pretty much summed it up pretty well. I think that we'd all like to pay less taxes, and that sounds good. And I think the trick though is making sure that we do it in a way where we can sustain it going forward. I think we were very fortunate last year whenever the pandemic started, that if we had taken the budget cut or the budget hit that we anticipated, our state finances were in good enough shape. We could have made it. We had enough in the rainy day fund. We had enough of a cushion. We could have sustained a more heavy hit to our economy and to our budget, which, I think that's a testament to the policies we put in place the last few sessions in the legislature. So I think we're in good financial shape, but you know, we're talking, you know, the full income tax is a third of our budget, a third of our discretionary budget. And that's a lot of money that is not, I mean, you know, it's going to be a challenge. And I, you know, again, I look forward to seeing the proposal and, you know, think that something responsible, you know, that we can make the money up somewhere else. I think that's a good thing. I also, you know, to kind of piggyback off Senator Barnett, I think that the grocery tax, you know, I would love to see that bill you got shunned for, Senator Barnett, because I think that's a good thing that that we need to look at eliminating. You know, I would prefer to look at eliminating that first, because you look at the kind of people that impacts and the amount of people, you know, everybody needs groceries. And if you want to talk about infusion into the economy, allowing people to get a 7% discount on their groceries is, you know, a pretty good thing if you talk about eliminating the sales tax on that. So I think there are a lot of interesting proposals out there that I've heard about. I'd like to see the one that's going to come down to us to vote on, but hopefully we get something reasonable that's sustainable and won't negatively impact the budget too much.
It's definitely a very complicated issue, and one that's obviously only been, you know, talked about, and certainly y'all have an opportunity to sort of dig into the details. Listen, I want to thank each of you for your participation this morning. You've all done a great job. You're doing a great job representing the area here, and we're all very excited to watch and see what proposals come out this year. We've got a couple more minutes, so I want to give each of you, and I'll start with Senator Barnett, and then just go alphabetically to let the four of you have a final word. But again, it's been my pleasure to be with you this morning and to help keep this conversation rolling along. And so, Senator Barnett, I would ask that you mention a little bit about corrections, sort of in your, since you're the chairman of corrections, because we all know there's been a lot of issues there. But I'll give you each a couple of minutes. We'll just go around the horn alphabetically to close it out, and then I'll hand it off to Chad Newell. Senator Barnett.
Thank you. Again, it's been a pleasure to be invited to this, and hopefully next year we can get back to in-person type, which is, I think, is awesome. But just to talk briefly about corrections, I've worked probably the entire time that we've been out of session with different groups and agencies that had some heartburn with the corrections bill that we had put out last year. I think was a great bill that we put out. The problem that I'm finding is that a lot of people was misinformed on what the bill actually did. And the bill was just a bill to maybe allow parole to individuals. It was not a guarantee, but you had to put something in place to give individuals the possibility of hope. But to just incarcerate someone forever and think that you're going to educate them without them ever having the possibility of parole or the possibility of not getting out of jail, you think that educating them to change their behavior is going to be productive. You're only fooling yourself. You know, people only take advantage of those type of things when they know that there's a possibility for that individual to probably be paroled, or the possibility of getting out at some point in time. So those are some of the things that we're working on. Also, to make sure that if an individual going forward, you know, is to be paroled and things like that, is that we want to make sure that when the Department of Correction releases that individual, we want them to make sure that they have the best job training that we can give them, and or their driver's license versus a state ID that just only identifies you. But we all know that releasing the individual with an ID and not a driver's license is only going to lead to that individual going back, because they may be doing the best they can and borrowing a relative's vehicle just to go down the street and go to encounter a roadblock, and because of the fact that they are a convicted felon without a driver's license, then they find themselves right back where they started from. So we need to fix a lot of things in regards to corrections, and we do know that the only reason why it's not being talked about as much as it is because of COVID. But at one time, you know, we were the talk of the nation in regards to our correction system. And hopefully this year we can take some steps to really start to correct that. So thank you all, Chad, for having me this morning.
Representative Byrd.
Well, thanks again for hosting this, and to everyone listening in. I get compliments from people who really enjoy hearing from their representatives and their senators. For county affairs, we've been working trying to change the funding mechanism for our local bridge program. And the way it's set up now, counties who repair their bridges and take care of them don't really get rewarded for that. So we'd like to change that funding mechanism to account for the number of bridges you have and the deck space of those bridges, so that we're not just funding for bridges in general, but we're funding for the amount of deck space you have. So it's more equitable that way. And one other thing that I'm interested in for counties is, and Forest County does a good job under this, but we mandated that we have reverse auctions. That's not practical in every case, and it certainly makes it difficult to do business with your local vendors, with your hometown folks, and you like to keep the money in your community when you can. So I'm hoping for some relief in that, if nothing other than on your term bids, where the supplies you get for whatever, paper towels, this and that, stationery, that you can do business locally without having to do it. But Forest County is savvy enough. The way the program's set up is you just get an exemption, you beg permission to not have to use a reverse auction, and you move forward. Every county is not that sophisticated, and I'd like to see some improvement in that area. We've been working toward it. Maybe we can make a little progress this year.
Representative McCarty.
Yeah, well, thanks again, to all of you for hosting this and for having us out this morning. Senator Barnett mentioned this, but I hope that we're able to do this in person next year. It is obviously a different setting. I'm in Jackson as well. It's very cold up here. I would much rather be warm, drinking a cup of coffee at the Trent Lott Center or somewhere thereabouts on campus. So I'm again, thank you all for having us. I'm excited about the session. I think we basically covered most of the policies that'll be coming through education that I would be working on or have on my radar. So it's certainly going to be an interesting session, and it'll be kind of dependent on how the next couple months go, and hopefully I think all of us would hope that the state budget looks like it's in good shape in March, and we're able to give all of our educators a pay raise and invest more money in pre-K and put more monies into our universities and colleges and all of those great things. So hopefully that is where we're headed, and I'm excited to see where the session leads from here. And again, thank you all for having us this morning.
Thank you. And the final word from Representative McGee.
Thank you very much. Look, I appreciate y'all holding this every year, and I think all of us would agree that we represent the very best part, the very best of the state of Mississippi. To be able to represent the Pine Belt is an honor, and y'all make us look good. The ADP makes us look good. Our citizens are in this area. So really, I do think that we represent the finest area of the state with so much potential. I do want to just throw in real quick from my public health position, or to let y'all know that go get your COVID vaccines. You're in the healthcare industry, and if you are 75 or older, and I just want to be sure that everyone realizes that Hattiesburg Clinic is taking appointments this morning for those that are 75 and over. Also, we have opened up positions or appointments out at the Lake Terrace Convention Center in the parking lot. Department of Health is running. Last week, we were booked through the end of January. We had no slots available, being such a healthcare heavy district. But I ended up speaking to Dr. Dobbs last week. He actually told me that the Hattiesburg area per capita had more vaccines shipped to us than any area of the state, but then they still were generous enough to open up some additional slots. So I do believe there may be 1 or 2 appointments available even this afternoon, but certainly later in the week. So please get your folks out that are 75 and older this week. And hopefully starting next week, we'll lower that age to 65 and we'll get this just process, really going strong and put this dreadful virus behind us. But I just really wanted to get the word out that there are appointments available. So please take advantage of that. So thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks to all of you. And thank you for the continued good work you do on behalf of all of us. Thanks to our folks who tuned in this morning. And at this point, I'll hand it over to Chad Nowell for some closing comments. Thank you.
Good morning, guys. Chad Driskell, thank you so much for once again moderating our panel today. You did a great job as always. Chad has moderated this legislative forum for us now for many, many years in a row and does a marvelous job. And of course, he's a former chair of the ADP and very grateful for his continued service. Also want to thank our legislative delegation. These guys do a great job. You are really governing in very difficult times. And so really that's what leadership is all about, responding to adversity. No one could have fathomed the adversity that we've had as a country and as a state and community during the last year. But that's what leadership is about, navigating treacherous waters. And so we are glad to have each of you at the helm. Many thanks to Senator Barnett and Representatives Byrd, McCarty, and McGee for joining us on a cold, rainy Monday morning on Zoom. I know it's not the easiest thing in the world to present on Zoom. You would rather all be in person. But look, these are the cards that have been dealt. And thank you so much again for your leadership in Jackson. And really thanks for being such a responsive delegation. You guys step up again and again for the Greater Hattiesburg area, for the Pine Belt. You're always available to me and my staff as we call and as our business community has issues that they are trying to navigate through. And you're always available and willing to have a listening ear and see how you can help in the legislative process. I also want to thank our sponsors one more time, Cooperative Energy, Forest Health, Pain Companies, and South Group Insurance. All of these companies have been sponsors since the very beginning of the legislative forum. And more importantly than that, all of the respective CEOs of these companies are very engaged with the ADP and trying to move the economic needle in our state and in our community. Jeff Bowman, CEO of Cooperative Energy, is the treasurer of the ADP this year, so he will be our chair in a couple of years. Andy Woodard, CEO of Forest Health, is on our board of directors. Ab Payne, CEO of Pain Companies, is former chair of the ADP, also on our partnership foundation, and happens to be the general campaign chair for our fundraising campaign this year. So very thankful for Ab. And Roman Gailey with South Group Insurance is also on our executive committee. So the business community in Greater Hattiesburg just steps up. You guys commit your financial resources, but then you commit your time and you roll up your sleeves and make great things happen here in the community. Did want to briefly highlight too, in mid-December, I'm sure nobody missed this headline, but we were able to recruit Idaho Forest Group to the community. And I want to really also thank the legislative delegation, because one thing that they do is they help fund the Mississippi Development Authority, the governor's statewide economic development agency. And it's very important that MDA has those crucial funds to be able to proactively market the state and recruit new companies to our state and to our community. And then also all of the grant programs that the legislators fund for MDA, such as the ACE grant, the Governor's Closing Fund, and the DIP grant for infrastructure improvements, and economic development highway grants, again, for infrastructure. We talked a lot about infrastructure on the call today. And so all of those come into play as we're trying to recruit companies, and they came into play when we were trying to recruit Idaho Forest Group. The company CEO, Mark Brinkmeyer, and his team visited Greater Hattiesburg 5 times during the middle of a global pandemic from July 2020 to December 2020. And after conducting a multi-state search, selected Greater Hattiesburg, the Lumberton area in South Lamar County, for a $120 million capital investment. They'll be building a state-of-the-art sawmill. It was the largest capital investment in the history of Lumberton. The project will create a lot of direct jobs, but we always talk about direct, indirect, and induced jobs. And I can't think of a sector that exemplifies that more so than the forest product sector. They're going to create 135 direct jobs, averaging 44,000 per job. With benefits, the jobs will average 50,000. Those are great jobs here in our community and our state, above state and regional averages. And then the company will be purchasing, once fully operational, when they're producing about 300 million board feet of lumber per year, they're going to purchase upwards of $50 million per year in timber within a 70-mile radius. Guys, that's just staggering. Think of the landowners that will benefit, the loggers that will benefit, the transportation companies, all the mom and pop shops as they stop and get gas and grab a bite to eat. It is really, truly a wonderful example of a project that will have a large multiplier effect in our economy. Finally, I want to mention Forward Together. As fate would have it, in the middle or hopefully toward the end of this global pandemic, we are trying to raise $4 million in private sector corporate funds that will help fuel the ADP from 2021 to 2025. These funds form a significant portion of our budget. In 2010, we raised $2.3 million. In 2015, we raised $3 million. And now in 2021, we are trying to raise $4 million. I'm pleased to say that we have already eclipsed $3 million in our $4 million fundraising campaign. So we are 75% of the way there, but now we need you to come on board with us. No pledge is too small. No pledge is insignificant. It all matters because it's about your buy-in in our program of work. We have a very good strategic plan to guide our economic development efforts over the next 5 years. We already have 53 investors that have raised $3 million or invested $3,080,750. And so we are on our way to the $4 million mark. But I encourage you in your business to consider coming on board with this program of work. It's very exciting. Our unemployment rate, guys, in April of 2020 spiked to 12.7% toward the beginning of the pandemic. I am so pleased to say that in January of 2021, our unemployment rate has already dipped down to less than 6%. So with a very good business action plan in place, great investors on board, once we get beyond this pandemic, we're going to hit the accelerator, and this post-pandemic era is going to be very exciting for us in Greater Hattiesburg, the Pine Belt, and the state of Mississippi. So thanks again for joining us today. Thank you for your engagement in the legislative process. Thank you for your membership in the ADP. Please consider joining us with Forward Together, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Zoom soon and hopefully in person in the coming days. Have a great week, and we'll see you around town soon. Take care. Bye-bye.